council when the International Property Maintenance Code was passed. And there was discussion of rental inspections. I think that was 2005. There was a lot of pushback from landlords. We had public safety come and make presentations. They said, if you want to hear some horror stories, there was absolute horror stories. People living in what would be basement units who had a cement block, loose cement blocks was their steps to get out, which could move and fall down. We had they said electrical stuff that was just unbelievable. There'd be a fire in a place and they'd get it out. It didn't forcibly destroy the place. And then it'd be rented out a week later and they knew significant electrical upgrades could not have been done. They kind of went on and on. And, that's why I asked about the fees. I mean, cities do things that don't make, we do things at times that don't make money. So I'm interested, it's up to council vote for sure, but that the fees not become excessive, because I like the safety component, especially of that. I'd like to not have that be an impediment to fees, but some of the things that really do need to be fixed. And the idea was that, in your own home, if you decide to wire your own whatever, and you don't do it well, and you're the person who's in your family are the ones who are going to suffer. When you wire it for a tenant, they may not have the kind of aptitude to even understand it's good or bad or anything, much less know about it. So I think there is some responsibility from the greater community to say, if you're going to run a business, rent things out, someone has to oversee that. Clearly, public safety has said over the years, just to leave it up to everyone's good judgment, it's not adequate in all cases.
Okay. Charlie, did you have something?
Just a quick note that the International Maintenance Code is already codified in our ordinance. So presumably every structure in this town is supposed to meet the International Maintenance Code. If it doesn't, we have the right to condemn it.
Okay, Matt?
Well, I would just add that, the number of rentals we currently have in this town doesn't meet the need. So right now, there really is no incentive for a landlord other than being a good landlord to improve your property and maintain it correctly and have it be safe and those sorts of things. So.
Okay. Sure.
Rich? I would just like to add that I can't imagine anyone in this room who might have rental property would object to this ordinance and maintain their property in accordance, because it's just the right thing to do.
Okay. Anybody else who hasn't spoken? Rich? You did speak, but.
Well, this isn't a comment. This is just a question on the map. John, what does non-PRE? I assumed it's potential rental, but then I couldn't figure out what the E stands for.
Exemption.
Oh,
That is, if you own a home and you declare it as your principal residence, then you're not required to pay the 18 mills of education tax to the local school district. If you are a seasonal owner, or you own property and you rent it, you're supposed to file a certificate saying you are a non-PRE, which means then you pay the 18 mills taxes. Now, one of the things that I have seen with rental inspection programs is that there is a likelihood that if the program does start, there are going to be some homes that are getting the PRE waiver. They're not paying the 18 mills, that are actually rental properties because the owners didn't file the certificates to pay the extra taxes, which is a benefit to the local school district. So that's what the PRE is. That's the equalization acronym for principal residential exemption. The non-PREs, these are all the people that are paying the extra 18 mills a year. And like I said, some of these properties are probably seasonal, but some of them are rental. So you don't know. This gives you a kind of a broader brush of where they're located throughout the city, but I can't tell you which ones would be rental and which ones are seasonal until you have a program that requires registration.
You know what the date of this map is?
Yeah, the date of the map would have been probably a month ago.
Oh. Because I know of, you know, 4 parcels that are shown in Aqua that are. Shouldn't be. I don't know how,
Then they're paying the 18 mils, because this is based on the equalization parcel data.
okay.
All right, are we ready to move forward with the motion? Oh, Karen.
One quick question, is this going to be for short-term rentals as well? The rental inspection program,
Yes,
so it would cover everything?
Yeah.
So the committee put together the language of the ordinance and we're good with that to forward it on to council?
Mhm.
Because when I read through it, I felt like some of the words were interchangeable and it needed clarity in spots, but.
it'll go to council, for review. They may, like they did with the first short-term rental ordinance, remand it back,
Okay,
but I think the committee wanted to get it to a point where they could send it up to council to get the process going.
Yeah, I think we can consider this a draft.
And if you, and Carolyn, if you have any particular comments, write them down or and scan them and send them over to me, and Lisa and I'll take a look at it.
okay.
Are we ready for a motion?
If I could, I guess I want to express, to me, I guess where if I have any directionally, I would be in support of this. I'm just concerned about the implementation and the speed of which it is implemented. And I'm uncomfortable supporting it in its current state, but not because of the objectives, but it's the timing of those objectives. And I feel like we are putting a 90-day, although implementation will take longer, but in theory, we're putting a 90-day timeline on some of the property owners. And I feel like, so I would feel more comfortable if there was a grandfather period in here as we start to phase this in. That'd be much longer than 90 days. The inspections, in my mind, the inspections could start, within that time frame. But the ability to cure, I think we need to extend a grace period to allow a property owner to remedy those violations.
Is there a way we could do the resolution that,
Well,
or not the resolution? the
Yes,
recommendation?
I think the commissioner's comments will be reflected in the minutes.
Right, I was gonna ask if
Yeah.
our minutes could go to
And
that.
the minutes will go with the ordinance to council,
Yeah.
so they can pick up what the
Okay,
level of conversation was.
excellent. So you're. I don't know who will do the minutes, but. When we read the minutes, make sure that the statement is adequate for you. Are we ready for a motion?
Well, I would make a motion to send this, what I'm gonna call draft rental inspection program. This be an ordinance, John?
Yes,
Ordinance for consideration to city council. This draft, I'm gonna call it a draft ordinance, which is what we were told it is,
it's a draft.
but this draft, yeah.
A second.
Okay, Ted makes the motion, Charlie seconds. A roll call?
Paul,
Yes.
McSweeney,
Yes.
Braddock. Yes. Buck,
Yes.
Detmer,
Yes.
Meridian,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
and Wilmot.
Very good. So moving on. We're gonna have a staff presentation on housing quality.
We're gonna be music.
And he did provide the packet for his PowerPoint.
I put together for the planning commission a short presentation on housing quality assessment. And then after I prepared it, I thought maybe I'd just document some stuff in writing for you, which I'll go over in my presentation. One of the actionable items in the master plan, in addition to the rental inspection, was taking a look at housing quality assessments to determine if there were any particular neighborhoods in town that maybe were starting to slip relative to housing quality. The way that we did it was, rather than do a parcel by parcel inspection, we utilized this was working, now it's not. Is that the keyboard? There you go. The way that we utilized it was, thanks. Is that okay? We used data in an analytical program to take a look at potential areas within the city that may have the potential for housing quality issues. And what we did is we used the American Census Survey, which is the ACS, and we used their block groups. A block group is a census statistical area that has between either 650 or 3,000 residents. And unfortunately, the boundaries don't always follow or reflect physical features. So sometimes, in the case of Petoskey, they don't follow the Bear River as an example as a boundary. They don't follow the rail line as a boundary. They don't follow some of the major roads as a boundary. So they're basically they're crafted in order to get those different population amounts within a defined area. You have several block groups in the city, and they're coded. We coded them A through G. And you can see that I tried to put on here some of the major streets so you can get an idea of where these are located. So A is primarily 31 in the 131 corridor, plus residential areas on the west or east side of Mitchell, which are the Madison, Jefferson, Monroe streets, just across from City Hall. Area B includes properties that are on either side of the Bear River, from 31 all the way to Emmett Street. C is from Emmett over to Wakazu. D is primarily from Mitchell Street south to Jennings. And then E is Mitchell Street north to the lake. E is or F is the area south of Sheridan between Standish and 131. And G is between Standish and Jennings. So it kind of gives you a geographic area of where these neighborhoods are, these block groups. What we used was several different attributes to try to figure out where some potential housing quality areas would be. And the attributes that we used are based on longstanding literature relative to certain demographic groups have a higher tendency of living in rental units. Rental units typically when they're compared to owner occupied, have a higher degree or a lower degree of housing quality over time. So we looked at areas, block groups that had houses built prior to 1939. We looked at block groups that had a high percentage of rental households, home areas, block groups that had home values less than 99,000. Based on the last census, that's about 3 years ago. We looked at block groups that had a high percentage of people over the age of 25 that only had a high school diploma. We looked at the percentage of lower income households and the percentage of female headed households. So these were the attributes that we looked at and used. When you're going to see the maps that are prepared in the report and in the slideshow, we were able to compare two different variables against each other. So in this case, we looked at houses built prior to 1939 compared with the high percentage of rental households. So the program analyzes both data sets and then it maps them out in a color combination. And what you want to be particularly interested in is the area, which is the sweet spot where you have on the x-axis, you have the percentage of rental households. So as you go from left to right, that percentage increases. And on the y-axis, which is the vertical, is the percentage of households that are housing units that were built prior to 1939. So up in the upper left-hand corner is where you have a high percentage of both. High percentage of houses built prior to 1939, plus a high percentage of renter households. So when you take that and we map it, that's the high rate of overlap. This is where the how these block groups come out. So the ones that have the greatest overlap are block group B, block group E to the north, and block group G. So these are the ones that have a high percentage of older households and a high percentage of renter households located. We also took a look then at home value versus educational attainment. So these would be areas that have a high percentage of lower priced homes versus a higher concentration of people that live in those homes that have only a high school diploma. And I'm not saying high school diploma in a derogatory sense, but we know from data that unless somebody that has a high school diploma that's in a skilled trade, if they're not in a skilled trade, they typically would have a lower income and therefore probably qualify for rental property. So in this case, when we mapped those two variables together, we found that they were in block group B, block group C, and in block group E. All right. And then we took the third set of data, which was low income, percentage of low income households versus the percentage of female headed households. And we found that in the literature, unfortunately, female headed households that have children have a lower income to live off of, lower disposable income, and typically will reside in rental property or in lower priced homes, depending on their income. So these are kind of typical broad-based factors that we take a look at. And when we mapped those, we found that those households lived in area F, E, F, and G. So then based on that information, we compared all the block groups against each other. And we found that some of the block groups have multiple indices. For example, E, which is on the north side of town, has a high percentage of renters, has a high percentage of folks with high school diplomas, and also has a lower income per household and a high percentage of female headed households. So we were able to then map those out to try to figure out where some housing quality areas may be that would require additional review. After we took a look at that analysis, we asked the question, why does, like, for example, area E hit all of the factors? Well, the reason being is there's several apartment complexes up in area E that influence that analysis. One of them is a MSHDA assisted housing apartment complex that has a high percentage of income adjusted households in them and female headed households. So we looked at that. That was kind of an outlier. Area A, which is along the 31 and 131 corridor, did not hit any of the criteria, even though some of the housing over on Monroe, Madison, Jefferson, in that area definitely was built prior to 1939. It's a very historic area, and there is a degree of renter occupied houses. The reason why that did not show up is because block group A also includes Bay Harbor, and Bay Harbor skewed the data in area A. So as a result, What we were looking at was area B, which is on either side of the Bear River neighborhood as a possible location for housing quality issues. Area F, south of Sheridan, and over in area G, which is the areas that's south of Jennings, kind of the neighborhoods that are surrounding the college. So we took a look at those. And actually what we found is at that time when we analyzed it, I took a ride through the neighborhoods and took a look to see if there was any concentration of lower quality housing, and I really found very few. So there isn't any really particular group, neighborhood, or series of blocks that I would say have housing quality decline issues. But in terms of a strategy, I would suggest if you take a look at your map on the first page of the handout, we would want to continue to monitor areas C, monitor D, and monitor area E for in the future for any possible changes in quality. And areas A, B, F, and G would be the possible areas that we'd want to start focusing attention on the rental inspection program. So this is how we would set up the areas for the rotation of inspections. Another strategy to take a look at would be in block group B and D, F, which are on the either side of the Bear River in the area, the neighborhoods that are south of Sheridan, which is also the location of the proposed Maple block, would be to take a look at the possibility if those areas would qualify for a neighborhood enterprise zone, which would be a way of providing some tax incentives for people to rehabilitate their properties. Then part of maybe a longer term planning initiative would be in area F, would be to do a sub area redevelopment plan because of some of the properties over on Clarion and over on Standish that you have some vacant parcels that would make excellent candidates for additional housing. So what the analysis indicated was there's really no area in the city that is showing any noticeable signs of decline. There are some scattered sites throughout the city that eventually would be picked up through a rental inspection program. But then there's opportunities to possibly start taking a look at some housing incentive programs that have been approved by the state, and also take a look at a planning commission taking a deeper dive into area B and F to take a look at how many potential redevelopment sites are there, what type of housing typologies we would like to propose, like single family duplexes, triplexes, or apartment units. So that's in a nutshell the housing quality assessment. After I prepared the slideshow, I put it down in writing, so in a document, so at a later time you can read through it, have a better understanding of how we utilize the data in order to really focus in on areas and then come up with a longer term housing strategy. Do you have any questions?
Charlie.
Very interesting and excellent data for us to consider. Would it be even more effective if we were able, the way that the parcels are laid out, which, if I understood correctly from your introduction, while the program cannot control physical characteristics, you nevertheless define these areas A through G for the purpose of this exercise, correct? If it was twice as many areas, so that it could, for instance, eliminate Bay Harbor as an example, or eliminate Harbor Watch from A, and focus on smaller parcels, wouldn't the data be a lot more telling?
The data definitely be a lot more granular, but the problem is that the Census Bureau establishes these boundaries. We don't. And that's how they collect their data. And the lowest. A through D is census. These are the census boundaries. Sorry. No, I just said that you would hope that they would be, the boundaries would be, that would reflect physical characteristics. Right. but they don't, they overlap. So you understand, and this is the lowest aggregated unit that they do for a city of this size. Now, for a community that's probably 50-60,000, they'll actually do it down to the block, where you can really get pretty refined on what those patterns would be, but the data doesn't go down that deep for a smaller community like Petoskey. Yes.
Matt,
I just had a question, in the write-up, it says block groups A, B, and G should be monitored. So is that including C, D, and E, or?
Those would be the ones, the A, B, and G. Matt, those are the ones, I mean, in the report, A, B, and G, and F actually monitored for the rental inspection program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We just need to keep, when you really think about it, C and D are the historic neighborhoods, the Mitchell, Lake Street over there, Michigan State. The homes over there are in really good shape, but you always have to have an eye out just to keep track of what's going on. Yeah. So I wanted to present the housing quality assessment, and if the planning commission at some other point would like to have a more thorough explanation of what a neighborhood enterprise zone is, I'd be happy to put a 5-minute, 10-minute presentation together for you to kind of give you a background on that. The nice thing about the NEZ, the recent state amendment to it, was that communities that had neighborhood enterprise zones had to have point of sale ordinances, which meant that if you sold the property, before you could sell it, you had to have it inspected. The trigger there now is any community over 20,000 has to have a point of sale. Communities under 20,000 do not, which makes it a lot more of a incentivized tool for people to rehab their houses. Because one of the things that you want to do is, when you have a rental inspection program, which people could look at as a stick, you want to have some carrots. So if they have to make some improvements, there's some abatement programs or even grant programs. Because the city, discussion with the mayor, he had indicated that years ago, the city used to have a block grant program that they provided funding for, like energy and small improvements to homes. They haven't done that in a while. A lot of that has been transferred to the state, but the state MEDC does have programs that are available for that, but they will require the community to document what the needs are, and this is part of that need assessment. So we want to take a look at, we want to make sure that the community has access to what all of the available programs that other communities have access to. And so this is kind of like the foundation for that argument.
We had some kind of neighborhood improvement program that centered around the Emmett Street area. That was not a neighborhood enterprise zone, that was some other program.
Yeah, you don't have an NEZ here.
Okay. And I wonder, is that Emmett Street program still in force, or was there a certain time frame?
What was the name of it, Rick?
I don't know. That's what I'm trying to remember.
A few years ago.
It was a few years ago, and there were a number of property owners that took advantage of. I think it was low interest.
Yeah,
loans.
that's kind of what the mayor had indicated. He said, but it's been a while since we've had it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
you can Google Michigan Economic. Actually, I just Googled neighborhood enterprise zone and came up with Michigan Economic Development Corporation. They have a 2-page thing that explains the neighborhood enterprise. And it has to do with tax abatements as part of it. So if it's your primary home, though, then you probably wouldn't qualify for it.
Oh, yeah, you do.
NS.
You do. You can. Yeah, the NEZ is both renter and owner incentive based.
Right, but if it's your primary home, I don't know if it works for other things, but as we have, like, we gutted our kitchen,
Yes,
that did not involve any additional taxes.
Don't say that publicly.
Well, we did all the permits and, okay. Don't put that in the minutes. I know with my, you know, a family member built a garage and that was a brand new build.
Well,
And their taxes
You might want to stop.
changed.
yeah,
Well, unfortunately, that kitchen is all worn out now. It's an old kitchen now.
John, I just found that the blocks, block groups, obviously, as you said, an artificial construct. So in terms of knowing the task, it's a little bit difficult, but I guess it helps you define the area and
yeah,
stuff.
it is. I agree with you. I wish it would have been, the Census Bureau used to define block groups by physical features, like major roads, railroads, rivers, creeks, which made it, a lot of people said, you know, I live over on this side of the community. Well, then they went to, we want to make sure that the block groups have a certain core population. So they basically redistrict everything and they overlapped. So that's the problem. So.
Rick? Did you want to say something?
just turning my microphone.
Okay. So would you like direction on whether we'd like to pursue this?
We can either talk about it now or maybe at the next meeting if you want to pursue any aspect of it.
Well, this is very helpful.
Pursue any aspect of it, meaning, like what?
Or like if you want to take a deeper dive into an NEZ, you know, there, you know, MEDC has a 2-pager, but I could put a more detailed presentation together for you.
I certainly think that would be helpful because I understand that there are pros and cons to NEZs, and it'd be very interesting to hear a full educational presentation on what's involved.
I would support that too. I'm not sure if there's anything here that was really earth shattering when you're explaining it to me and your areas of concern or additional monitoring would make rational sense. And I feel like this is the starting point to identify a potential need or opportunity for our community. And it seems like the logical next step would be to look at a NEZ and start to think about some incentives that we could to help these areas with.
And do.
Okay. Shall we move on? This is September, and in September, we elect the chairperson and the vice chair. So if you can take one and pass it down. So as they're passing it down, the way we have been doing elections is, I'll just go through the procedure. Candidate selection rules provided are based on Robert's Rules of Order and the process currently used for the Petoskey Ward Convention City Council candidate nominations. This format is I've been using because in the regular election procedure, nothing's specified in the bylaws. So the selection rules are: chair opens the floor for nominations. A person can nominate themselves. Any board member can nominate another board member. Nominations for officers do not require a second. A member can decline the nomination during the nomination process. And then, not hearing any further nominations, the chair will declare the nominations closed after confirming there are no more nominations forthcoming. If a candidate for office is unopposed, a simple voice vote is allowed, and if there is more than one candidate for an office, it will be a ballot vote, and we will tear these pieces of paper for ballots. So if the commission is satisfied with my chair duties, I am willing to run again. But anyway, at this point, I'll open it up for nominations.
Can you, again, which chair?
Oh, yes. Okay, so then here's part two.
Oh.
So we'll elect the chairperson first, and then we'll elect the vice chairperson / secretary second. The chair shall preside at all meetings, appoint committees, and perform such duties as may be delegated by the commissioner, city council. The chair may establish committees from the commission membership as needed and shall have the right to appoint new committee members at any time to fill a vacancy. So those are the chair jobs.
I nominate Cynthia Robson as our chair.
Okay. No. Would anybody else like to nominate? Any other nomination? All right. I'll close the floor for nominating, and all in favor of me being chair, say aye. Thank you for your vote of confidence. All right, we move on to the vice chair, person secretary. Ted has been that. And he does a great job at what was required. The vice chairperson secretary shall act in the capacity of the chairperson in his or her absence and shall serve as a liaison between the commission and the designated staff member responsible for the execution of documents in the name of the commission. And that includes the minutes. So Ted, would you?
Well, I'm happy to do it. If someone else is interested in being vice chair, I'm totally fine with that.
Okay. So I'm opening it up for nominations for the vice chair.
I nominate Ted Paul.
Okay. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right. So all in favor, I'll close the floor for nominations. All in favor of Ted Paul for vice chair. Congratulations, Ted.
Thank you.
All right, and I believe we go on to public comments. As there is no public, we'll move on to commissioner comments.
I have one, if I could. Well, last meeting, I believe, when we discussed the Maple Black Flats. I just wanted to ask John about this issue came up about the contamination and reporting and information and you know, a lot of good city staff working on it, Eagle working on it. Probably the Conservancy looking, or the tip of the mitt looking at. But to what extent, you know, is it possible that to the extent there's further testing done, that the planning commission would at least formally, informally, just see some of that material just to keep informed?
Sure, I can discuss that with the city manager as they do additional testing.
Just because it was on our plate and we discussed it at length.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, right, when I read
Sure.
I'm sorry.
I'm just making sure I say the name.
Yes, exactly. When I read my amendment to the minutes, I glanced over at the city manager and got a wry smile. So I'm not sure whether he agreed that it was going to be low cost or no cost. That's what I got from that, but unfortunately he skipped out, so we can't really address that right now, so. But hopefully, according to the city council meeting on Monday night, he is pursuing it. The city is pursuing that additional testing.
You know, I could wait until hopefully the video will come up and I could listen to that section again and confirm that that's what she said.
I'll send you this.
Yes, please do. Okay. Any other commissioner comments?
Yeah. I would be remiss not to ask about the progress of the sign committee and when the commission will have an opportunity to begin to address the recommendations of the sign committee.
The sign committee is having their second meeting this Tuesday. And it will just depend on where we land, whether it's ready to come to the commission or not.
Who's currently on the subcommittee? Do you and Benny?
And Ben Slocum.
And secondarily, I would be remiss not to ask about the status of the short-term rental at city council, but since the city manager's not here, I can just say that I heard that it's on the agenda for the next city council meeting, but that's what I heard. I don't know if it's.
If I may, they're also looking at a special meeting on September 28th.
They did have that on for a previous meeting. but something came up and it got bumped.
Make a
So,
block, yeah.
But why the special meeting?
To go over the short-term rental ordinance.
right now, the short-term rentals are on permanent hold.
6-month moratorium.
Yeah, thank you, 6-month moratorium.
Right.
And in that time, the city council needs to agree on what the short-term rental ordinance is going to look like.
And if there is one,
Right. So they're still working on the language for the. Both the police, I think our ordinance went through, because there's really not much to write about the zoning for short-term rentals within the zoning ordinance. So didn't that pass?
No, they held that up too.
Okay, they held that up too.
My recommendation would be when they set the date. It's either gonna be a special meeting or it could be at the regular October council meeting. I'll send out a notice, but I think it would be appropriate for the short-term rental committee to come to the meeting in case the council has questions, to provide that background in terms of what our discussions were. I think that was Cynthia, Rick, and it was Charlie. The three of you were on that committee. Yeah, so.
and in keeping that, your presentation for the enterprise zones, I'm wondering if that, if they shouldn't be invited for that as well, just as a background.
Can mention it to the city manager. He can always,
Way we all hear it at the same time, get the same information.
I guess it depends on how complex it's gonna be.
yes,
So, because they do have the opportunity, oh, I forgot, sorry, usually I have that turned off. They have the ability, just like we do, to watch the videos if they can't attend. So if it's something that's a pretty general overview. I don't know that.
I think with the NEZ would be that if the planning commission takes a look at it and they think it's appropriate. And you define what the boundary should be of that. Then that recommendation goes up to council and then they're the ones that have to adopt it by ordinance. And I would imagine at that time, that's when they would get their informational meeting in terms of what it is and how it works and how it's implemented.
Is that okay? All right, I guess we're on to updates. Are there any?
No, we're kind of cranking through everything. Lisa's on vacation, so I know that she's got some code enforcement that she's been working on, but I'll let her discuss that with the planning commission at the next meeting.
I had a question about that. What about the family video property? Where's that at?
The family video property, my understanding is the last time I had a meeting a few months back, that was still on hold.
Why is it on hold?
Same thing with the market, lack of contractors, the high price of construction materials and the interest rates.
If they wait much longer, they're gonna have to come back for an update of site review. aren't
That's
they?
right. They've been informed of that in terms of the approvals, that they're gonna expire and they'll have to come back and go through it again.
Third bite at the apple.
As part of an update, we did have a meeting with a architect and developer out of the Grand Rapids area that's taking a look at the Rite Aid building
Nice.
for an adaptive reuse for a retail function. So that would be nice because of its visibility on that corner. So. Spot for another car wash. That was great. The car wash or storage facility,
Oh, dear.
you know.
What about lumber loss? Where's that?
That I can't, last time Lisa and I talked, there wasn't a lot of movement, so I don't know where that's at actually, construction.
Rick, do you remember the corner of Rite Aid before, when there was a previous structure there?
Years.
Yeah,
Wasn't
Gators Motel.
Yeah.
Several separate buildings and swing.
I barely remember. I think, even though it's just a medium-sized box. I think Hayner's wasn't that, architecturally wasn't.
That was bad. Pretty bad, by the end at least.
One thing I would like is they had a oversized monument sign. Which they were allowed to do.
Right.
I would like to see that gone and go back to normal size.
We told them that,
Yeah,
they would have to comply with the current sign ordinance.
excellent. Because that was a ridiculous size. Any other discussion? We are adjourned at 7:16.
That's a record.
No, it isn't. The shortest meeting we had was 20 minutes.